Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to the Chatham Township Committee meeting of July 16th, 2024. Mr. LeConte, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 4th, 2024. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 4th, 2024. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 4th, 2024.
Thank you. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Lois?
Here.
Mr. McHugh?
Here.
Mrs. Rowland?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Choi? Mayor Ewald?
Here.
We have quorum.
If everybody could join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you all. I'm pleased to see our Chatham Township Police here. In my opening statements later on, I am thanking you all for all the work that you did to allow us to get reaccredited by the New Jersey Association of Chiefs of Police. So I want to thank you all for your efforts. We're very excited to have everybody here to welcome a new police officer to our ranks. Chatham Township is proud to welcome Robert Forte to the ranks of the Chatham Township Police Department. In 2012, Robert enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps, where he served as an ammunition technician until 2016. After the Marine Corps, Robert attended Bergen Community College and graduated with an Associate of Science in Business Administration, concentrating in finance. Robert joined the Morris County Sheriff's Office in 2019 after graduating from the Morris County Police Academy's basic police class. During his time with the Sheriff's Office, Robert was a detective in the warrant section, where he successfully served several hundred criminal warrants. Additionally, Robert served as the PBA president for PBA Local 151. Tonight, Robert is joined by his girlfriend, Jillian Vesia, and his two brothers, David and Matthew Forte. Welcome to Chatham Township, and come on up for your swearing in. Think of which way I want, because I want you to be positioned. Yes. Okay. Okay. I state your name.
I, Robert Forte,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same
and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established in the United States
and to the governments established within the United States,
and in this state under the authority of the people.
and in this state under the authority of the people.
I do further solemnly swear
I do further solemnly swear
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all the duties of the office of
all the duties of the office of
police officer according to the best of my ability.
police officer according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And did we want to get some pictures?
Hurry up, Brian. Hurry up, Brian.
Usually admin up front. What's Scott?
Makes my hair out, crowd into the space.
You can go stereo. Just speaking the two of them.
What?
You can go stereo. Just put them together.
Okay, we're going to move into the public hearing of citizens. Mr. LeConte, once you're settled in, would you mind reading the guidance for the public hearing of citizens?
Members of the public are now welcome to come up to the microphone to address the Township Committee. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearing tonight. Those present may step up to the microphone to be heard. If you are watching via Zoom, you may speak during any of the public comment sessions by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. Whether in person or online, when you are recognized to speak, please mind the following procedures. Please say your name, spell your last name, and give the name of your street. You do not need to give your street number. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, the Township Committee will wait until you finish speaking before responding. There are 2 public comment sessions on tonight's agenda. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment of up to 3 minutes during each public comment period. Written comments submitted to the Township Clerk before 3 p.m. today will be read during the public comment sessions. Written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments. Duplicative written comments may be summarized rather than read in full, according to guidelines issued by the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services. And I have not received any written comments.
Thank you.
And we have 1 person with a raised hand on Zoom.
Okay.
Sure, Robeson, R-O-B-S-O-N, Pine Street, Chatham Township. I'm calling about the 3rd item on the workshop agenda. Is now a good time to speak, or should I wait till the 2nd public hearing?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Yes, now would be the time to speak.
Okay.
Oh,
So I've been going to Colony my entire life, and my family is there literally every day, unless we're away. And I'm also a 2nd-year lifeguard and 3rd-year employee. So I heard that there could be changes to the structure of Colony regarding the wall, and I think that if it becomes a straight wall, this will not only ruin the atmosphere of the pool and the pond-like feel it has, but also cause many safety issues that I'll now have to handle as a lifeguard, such as wall crawlers, so young kids getting to deep areas which they normally wouldn't be able to with the sloped walls. Also, I think this will increase the risk of kids just jumping right into the pool, because with the sloped walls, it creates a buffer, so we're able to get to the child before they're in the water. Also, I think this will make search drills much harder, because as you know, every week we do a search drill in case anything were to happen, and I don't think we'd be able to do this with the 90-degree angles, because it would just make it harder to enter the pool. And also, in relation to that, having the 90-degree walls would make it much harder to evacuate in case of an emergency like thunder or something else. And lastly, I think that if there is a decision like this being made, I think it's really important that there's input from the members, because this would really affect us, and it may change people's minds about going to Colony. Many people, I think, would be very upset with this change, and I don't think they would like it as much as they do now if we aren't able to give our input. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate your input. Do we have anybody else?
That was only raised hand.
Okay, and seeing no one in the audience, I will close the public hearing. I think I'm going to move into my mayor's message before the workshop. This evening's schedule is a little bit different than what we're accustomed to, so I'm gonna move this around a little bit. I wanted to congratulate our Chatham Township Police Department on receiving their third reaccreditation from the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police. I look forward to the meeting when the association members will attend and we can officially recognize this wonderful accomplishment. I'd like to also note that three officers, or thank three officers who were recognized. Detective Mike Bloom for his investigation of a financial crime. Officer Sean Lamb for his actions and investigation of a motor vehicle accident involving a cyclist. And Officer Colm Doherty for his actions during an encounter with a male experiencing a mental health crisis. Well done. Thank you for all you do for our Chatham Township residents. With one meeting scheduled for July, this evening's meeting will run a little different than usual. We'll start with a workshop session where we discuss upcoming resolutions and ordinances so the committee can provide input and direction to the township staff. Then we'll move into our traditional meeting where we will vote on a series of matters, including resolution to authorize bidding for the Colony Pool wall replacement. As discussed in prior meetings, the Colony Pool sidewalls are crumbling and in need of replacement. The committee requested the township engineer develop plans. A draft plan was circulated to the committee last week with updated plans provided today. Those plans will be discussed tonight so that we can move forward with the bid process and toward having the work completed in the fall. No decisions have been made at this time. This is a discussion to find the right answer for our community and for our colony members. I look forward to having an open discussion with this committee this evening to determine the best path forward. Also on the agenda is a resolution establishing an Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. With our fourth round affordable housing coming up in 2025, the state legislative changes and tight implementation timelines, it will be critical for this team to ensure we're doing all that we can behind the scenes to manage and plan for our fourth round affordable housing obligation. Before we move into the township business of this evening, I'd like to take a moment to address Sunday's attack on former President Trump. It's disheartening to know that the vitriol on both sides of the political aisle has come to this. I look to our township residents to lead with peace. We can disagree, we can debate, and we can be a passionate advocate for our causes. In the end, we take our differences to the ballot box. Voting, not violence. Violence is never the answer and has no place in our civilized democracy. My thoughts and prayers for speedy healing are with President Trump. Okay, so with that, we'll move into our workshop session. Mr. Shahadi?
Thank you, Mayor. Relatively late one. I mean, the reports were all sent by the department heads. I didn't receive any questions on any of those. But the first one is a matter under police. Please, police just mentioned in this report, but accompanying your agenda packet was a reference to an ordinance currently in place in our code regarding construction and contracting work on Sundays and holidays. It is a minor modification that we're seeking and wanted to bring to your attention hopefully for next month as an introduced ordinance, and that is to add Juneteenth to the list of federal holidays. It does specify national holidays, but since the time of this codification, that was not a holiday, and so we just seek to include it in our code. I think it's fairly straightforward. Any questions or concerns, or can we move ahead with drafting that ordinance amendment for next meeting?
Any concerns or objections?
Thank you. The next one is, as I mentioned at the previous meeting, or rather the last workshop meeting, a number of ordinances from other communities were provided that describe parks and fields, recreational area type rules, and policies. We don't have one that covers all of our parks and fields. We have two currently, one that covers the skate park, which is obsolete, and one that covers the Colony Pool tennis courts, but nothing that provides a comprehensive set of rules for all of our parks. So I made an attempt at trying to ensure that what we currently have, at least especially for tennis, but what would be appropriate for the rest of our parks, and looking at the way other communities police and regulate their usage of their fields is applicable to ours as well, from a safety perspective largely, but also in some areas to help DPW maintain the parks a bit more easily and more safely, but also to ensure that our police have a mechanism by which to discourage and deter people. We can't post a sign saying these things are not allowed and indicate penalties if we don't have these rules in place. So the draft that you have is just an initial stab at it. We don't have a draft ordinance yet because I wanted to make sure we get some time to deliberate about that. I think these are all fairly standard. I didn't put anything in there that was out of the ordinary, I don't think. Seek your feedback on that.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? I think you answered one of mine, which is whether or not these were enforceable, and I guess that's the point. Any questions, comments about the draft that we received, or any other areas folks would like covered that you're questioning why we're covering them?
And also just know that there are some in here that are repeated elsewhere on our ordinances that are sort of blanket township policies listed elsewhere, but they aren't specific to the parks. And so I just thought it would be helpful to have one set for the parks. And that way, if we decide, if this governing body or future governing bodies decide to remove them from other sections, that maybe they will still consider to be applied at least for our parks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm on the rec subcommittee, and I did conference with Mr. Choi in the last few days. He is away, and so we were going to dive deeper into this, specifically the field rules, how they would affect each sport. So we will have more comprehensive feedback when he returns and is able to meet. But just looking at these rules, one of the big ones that jumps out at me here is just simply the park opening and closing rules, right? So what I don't understand is how can we have a set of rules we don't already comply with, right? So we have Esternay Field is not accessible to the public in the hours that's even outlined here. So I would say we can't move forward with any kind of new rules or system of rules until we correct some of the things that we have had for years. And I've been on this committee for 3 years now, and I've been talking about this. That public field should have public access, and that field gets locked off, and it doesn't comply with these rules. And I do agree completely with Mr. Shahadi. These are pretty basic, pretty simple set of rules. And the idea that we have a park that doesn't comply with this pretty basic, pretty simple set of rules is kind of gross. I think we really need to attend to that, and quickly, because it's been literally years I've been bringing this up, and we haven't yet accomplished it.
Okay, I wasn't under the impression, I think people have had access to that park. So I think the idea here is that people have access and won't be chased out of the parks during those hours, but I'm not under the impression that you can't access that park during those times.
You can't access it. Now, periodically, it is locked and closed. I mean, there's a children's playground
you
park.
can't drive in there. Okay, sorry. I walk there when I go there. Okay, and a lot of times the gate is open, so that's why I was a little confused. But I'm usually there on the weekend when I go. Could you remind me, why is the gate often locked?
I mean, I can speak to police, and DPW can certainly clarify, but I think it's not that the park is not accessible, and it's not that the park isn't open, it's simply inaccessible to vehicles, and I think there are safety considerations there because it is not visible from the public, streets, and from easy line of sight for the police department, but certainly can consider that, but, I don't think that that's necessarily relevant to this discussion on the ordinance, certainly a discussion for another time.
I mean, my input on that would just be, it's been another time for a very long time.
Okay. If you and I could touch base on that.
Sure.
Okay. Any other comments on I would assume, because I saw about, dogs on leash, which is fine, except in certain areas. I assume, ADA, if there's, that would,
That
do
would
we
not,
need to include that?
we could certainly mention that, but that wouldn't
Okay.
be that would not be precluded by this ordinance.
Okay.
That would prevail. That supersedes this, so.
Yeah, I mean, everything else seemed reasonable and typical to me.
Yeah, and I mean, a number of things here were mentioned that were specifically to not impact, township sanctioned, and there's several places where I mentioned, township recreation organizations that are, or without prior approval. So any of our town leagues, town programs would not necessarily have the same set of rules.
Okay. Great. So the idea is to move forward with this for the August meeting.
Yeah, if there's consensus on these rules, I'll pass those along to our township attorney to draft the ordinance in the proper format, and then introduce hopefully in August.
Okay, so in terms of the rec subcommittee, if you get feedback in the next week?
Sure.
That should still be manageable.
Yep.
Would that be okay if you could provide that feedback in the next week?
Well, I will certainly attempt, but it's, Mr. Choi is not here this evening, and he's away, and I'm not sure what his schedule to return is.
Okay, so if you could just let us know how that's going, because I'm sure we've got plenty of time. Great, thank you. Okay, so let's move on from that one.
Okay, thank you. And the next one is Colony Pool Wall Design. There was a second draft circulated today, and I apologize for the late circulation of that, but it was to kind of incorporate some of the later feedback I received, and John and his team worked quite diligently to get that to us. He prepared a wall design that accounts for the entry into the pool, because I know that was a major concern with the straight wall design. So we have additional sets of stairs that would complement or rather replace, since the blue mats are being removed because of that slope. John did note that safety issues that were associated with those blue mats because of the grade, the lack of railing. So they do pose a safety issue in and of themselves. The stairs actually would be an improvement to the design, so that way people can enter safely and have rails along the side. Currently, the wall is, for the benefit of the public, just so they know, we have a lot of safety issues with that wall and maintenance issues because of the fact that it is so old, it's crumbling. Chunks of the wall are repeatedly fished out of the water. There's oftentimes gaps in the wall. This not only causes issues during the season, but then off-season, what ends up happening is water and snow can penetrate into there and further erode. So structurally, that wall is compromised. The DPW then has to patch it. We've been patching it for a number of years. It's reached its end of life, and then DPW has to paint it. So with the design that we've got before us, it is a safer design. It certainly makes things, and certainly respect the lifeguard that spoke, but disagree with the fact that it is unsafe for lifeguards, and many pools have straight walls. In some cases also, this allows people to reach over to the wall if they are having an emergency and hang on to the wall. Right now they don't have that. However, as far as wall crawlers, that's a discussion for you guys as to whether that is a good or bad thing. It reduces the maintenance that DPW has to do for the wall and improves the safety there as well. Our pool manager reviewed this design and also thinks that this design is a more superior design from a safety and operational perspective than what we currently have there. At the end of the day, if there isn't a consensus on this, we do have to move forward with a design for the pool wall to get rebuilt, rehabbed, so that way we can get started in September and have it open the next season. So if there isn't a consensus on this, then I think what we need to do is just default back to a status quo rehab in its current condition, but just a new one. And I seek your authorization by way of a resolution this evening to go out to bid, so that way there is no delay in terms of making an award come September.
Okay, thank you. And I know there's a lot of passionate opinions around this one, so I'm gonna stay quiet and I'll pitch in my what I have heard. And Committeeman Lois, I know you talked to the advisory committee, so if you kind of want to share that input, the Colony Advisory Committee.
Sure. Well, also, Mr. McHugh was generous enough to lend some time to me this weekend, and we did discuss this as well. And, you know, I'll first give you the advice of the Colony Pool Committee, I guess. So the advice of the Colony Pool Committee is that really has not changed at all since we last gave advice on this, or since the committee last gave advice on this, which is that that there be a staircase added, which there has been in this new design we received today at 3 o'clock, and that so that there be staircases on both the clubhouse side and the Spring Street side. So that is an improvement here. There are a number of staircases added to this design, so they go from the deepest end of the pool to the shallowest end of the pool. There's 3 on each side, and I'm describing for anybody who might be listening. Is it possible to put the design on screen? Or?
Yeah, or the images, that would actually be helpful, both of them. Great.
And is that document accessible now on the web? It's not, okay.
Can that be seen right now? Because you have it on the screen. It could be seen on the stream.
Alex, do you mind putting up the display on the broadcast? Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be pretty hard to discern that. Maybe we could just zoom in on one side at a time. Like maybe if we could zoom in on the clubhouse side, that would be, well, thank you, Greg, appreciate it. So there are three staircases. I guess one is in the traditional position of the staircase. There's one that's sort of in the middle there, and then one that appears to me, if I'm eyeballing and reading these elevations, it appears to me to be just outside where one of the mats is, just outside of the shallowest end of the pool, where the lane line goes across to cut off the shallow end of the pool. For those who haven't passed the deep water test, so you have sort of 3 staircases in the deep end of the pool. I think that is an improvement for accessibility in over the previous design, which had only a single ladder. But there are some other concerns that the pool committee put forward. The suggestion of the pool committee, which hasn't changed, is to go to the straight wall design, but exclusively in the lap lane area. So that would be the area from the dock to the deep end wall, and to have that straight wall there, but to have replacement in kind elsewhere in the pool. The idea of that is to preserve the appearance of Colony Pool as a natural water pool. One of the issues, one of the largest issues, and so I'll just end there with the Colony Pool's advice. The additional advice that was added in last night's meeting about that Colony Pool put together, the advisory committee put together as a, in preparation for tonight, is that the official advice is that documentation should be public, which I guess this is a bit public, and that we should have a period of time for this to be digested and commented on before we move forward. Okay. One of the issues with Colony Pool is that if you go there, is that the thing is bowl shaped. So whether you're at the snack bar or you're at the grills or you're on the off side of the pool, the Spring Street side of the pool, you're always higher than wherever than the center of the pool. And the pool, the whole facility is bowl shaped, and the walls that are sloped add to that. So it was said before that, being able to grab onto a wall if you're not a strong swimmer, if you're having trouble, might be helpful to you. But actually, having the sloped wall, much like a natural lake, allows anyone in the facility at any time to see who's in the water. And as a parent, that's very helpful, because when your child is too close to a straight-edged pool, you can't necessarily see them. And depending on as you move through the club, you won't be able to see them. So it's harder to see your child or to see anyone in a pool where you have a straight wall. That sloped wall creates a buffer and pushes people out into a visible area. Additionally, for the wall crawler issue, the issue of wall crawling is when you grab a wall and then you're able to go out deeper than where you can stand. So when you have that issue in a the shallow end, for anyone who hasn't passed a deep water test, you're able to grab the wall and you're able to get yourself into deeper territory. And a traditional straight edge pool, that puts you in danger. And when I was a lifeguard, that was certainly the predominant number of minor rescues that we had to do, is sort of grab somebody who floated off a wall and became uncomfortable. The stairs in the shallow end, which are now the stairs, I guess, in this new design, the stairs on the Spring Street side, which are the closest to the frog slide, they appear to me, and I'm just eyeballing it because we don't have a demarcation line for the shallow end, but that does appear to me to be in the shallow end of the pool. That staircase will now be used by small children to, enter the shallow end. And right now, they can only use the zero entry, right, the beach to enter the pool, or a mat to enter the pool. So they can be observed the whole time. They're not able to jump in, and they can't fall down or hit their head on a hard surface. And we have really no trouble attracting young families and small children. We have more trouble as people get older, and I'll talk about that later, but this is a place, if you're 4, you're 5, you're 6, you're 7, this is the greatest, the beach is the greatest thing. You make a river, you have some fun, and so that staircase there is problematic, and any straight edge at that point is also problematic. So, and we don't have those issues now. In terms of the quality of the pool and the quality of life, I mean, the historic nature of this pool is that it's been, it was dug by the original association, right, the Colony Association. It was supposed to be natural. It was so natural at one point that there was turtle and snakes that lived in the walls because they were rocks. But it's been a naturally formed pool, or it's a man-made pool, but it's made to look natural. And the curve of it, not only are we giving up the slope of the wall, but also the natural curve is largely be given up. We only have a single joint here to create containment. So at the very least, I would say this probably could have some improvements with additional angles there. But in terms of the bowl shape of the entire facility and then the natural curve of the pool, this could be, there could be definitely improvements. One of the big differences, I think, when you make comparisons between this pool and any other pool that has hard angles and and a deck, which is being proposed here as well, a 6-foot deck surrounding this new wall. Those hard surfaces at first seem like very attractive because they clean things up and maybe they're easier to maintain, but the issue is they make things hotter, louder, and it's not as soft and easy to spend the whole day at a concrete or hard bottom pool as it is at Colony. So what ends up happening is when you make a comparison between a traditional pool and Colony, we have a dark bottom. So you can't really account for some of the things that dark bottom creates, where like jumping in off of the side, you can't gauge how deep it is because you can't see the bottom. So there are significant differences, and then if you think about your own experience at a lake where they don't have walls like this, except for in deep areas like we do at Colony, there's good reason for that. Okay, if it would be possible, if we could go to, I'm sorry, Greg. Let me just change my mind there. Here on the drawing, it says railroad tie. You see that at the beach? And then it differentiates between a railroad tie and a CPP border. And the CPP border being it's sort of a black plastic border that surrounds the back of the beach, and then railroad tie here.
Where is that?
That's, it's on the clubhouse side of the pool, on the edge of the beach to transition to the lawn. So you'll see there's something there marked as a railroad tie. And then you have the 6-inch CPP border, which is, so they're differentiating materials there. You'll also notice on this site plan you have asphalt marked, and that's the asphalt sort of pathway around the pool. Yeah, that's the railroad tie. Thanks, Greg. Yeah. And then you have asphalt marked on the pool. And then on the far side of the pool, it's hard to tell because the new is overlaid directly over the old survey. But the old survey is not showing any pathway at all. It's showing the new proposed concrete pathway, which is all straight lines. Okay, so if you don't mind, Greg, if we go to my photos. Okay, so this is the first photo, and I'd like to note that there's a storm drain there, and that storm drain is missing from this survey. So we have a storm drain that's missing. Of course, that could be added in, and with how runoff works, that could be dealt with, but that was an upgrade at one time because of the water that was running into the pool that was added in, and you can see how close that is to the edge. That is not accounted for in the new design, and it's not on this survey. Okay, if you go to the next.
Where is that? Is that like midway on the, do you remember
So-
where that is?
So, yeah, so that would be close to where the staircase is, on the closest staircase to the beach on the bathhouse side, on the
Okay.
plan that we've been sent.
Oh, in the new drawing, okay.
In the new drawing, that's where it would be. And it would be entirely covered in cement according to this, to the new
Oh,
drawing, okay? And that's, the engineering concern of it or how to deal with that is not really my concern. My concern of it is how this was exactly made. Because this storm drain, if you left this off your survey and you wanted to widen your driveway, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. You'd have to provide an updated survey. If you wanted to add a shed, you couldn't do it as a resident. You would need an updated survey. And if you wanted to, do something simple like put a generator pad out for a new generator, you couldn't do it because the survey wouldn't be high enough quality.
Yes.
Right. Well, my point is, I don't believe that somebody has looked at this very, very closely because these elements don't exist anymore. So if you go to the next picture, this is an asphalt pathway. And this asphalt pathway is not depicted on this drawing at all. This is the asphalt pathway on the Spring Street side, and it's not shown on our plan. So I'm not sure how much time was really spent looking at this. And I think what this behooves our community is to say, like, hey, you know what, maybe there were some things that were missed. Maybe there's some things that we could slow down a little bit and just take a look. Because when you're missing something like a massive amount of impervious coverage and a massive design feature like that, there might be something else that might have been missed. And there might be another look or another set of eyes could point out what might be beneficial to the club. We'll go to the next image. Okay, so this is the other side of that asphalt walkway, and it continues to the dock. And I think, is that it, Greg, or do I have one more? I have one more, okay. And that there is showing the same CPP border, the same type border, and not a railroad tie wall. Okay, so again, the engineering diagram, not accurate. All right, so I'm just saying that it's clear that as a resident, you couldn't present this to get a permit to do any work. Okay.
Nobody was doing that. The sand's not on here, the blades of grass are not. This is conceptual for the purposes of the wall.
Right,
So
but we're
there's time for the engineers to prepare the bid specs, but we need some guidance on the main focus here, rather than spending time on these nitty-gritty details.
okay. Well, obviously you're reacting to it, so there must be something to this, because what I'm saying is that there could be a little bit more time spent on this, and I think it would put people, minds at ease. So looking at those things, and then looking at the safety factors, the quality of life, the design of it, I just think we need to spend more time on this. And I think passing a resolution this evening about authorizing bidding for the pool walls, putting the cart before the horse. I understand that we have this money already authorized in the capital budget. Now we're going to authorize the bidding of the pool wall. But that would best come, and I think everybody would agree, that would best come, and in an ideal situation, that would best come after we said, you know what, we had some public input. We looked at this thing. We're being transparent about the changes we're making, and they're going to be large changes to the pool, because it's not just simply, hey, we're repairing the walls. We're changing the egress and entrance to the pool. We're making big changes. So I think it would be a better idea if we just pump the brakes a bit, and even if we had to have an emergency meeting, even if we had to come back and say, hey, you know what, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, let's come and we could just vote on just this. As I understand it, the emergency rules are still in effect, or at least the Zoom rules are still in effect. We could even do it electronically. So I don't think it's that would be a major problem, certainly not from my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, as you were speaking, that's what I was thinking about. But what, could you, Mr. Shoddy, could you just tell me the timeline in terms of when we'd have to get the bid documents out? Because I know we want to do the work in the fall.
So if, from the point of authorization, the clerk would then, the following week have that in the paper, correct, Greg? So if it was
Well-
authorized tonight, then,
We wouldn't advertise until we actually have bid specs.
I'm just
prepared.
saying, if, just. like, bear with
Hypothetically,
me.
if we
So-
had
so
them
if
ready.
you- Tonight you had authorization, you would be able to advertise next week. It would
Yes.
be in correct. So that's kind of the timeline just for getting something in the paper. And then, based off this authorization, we would need a consensus on the design. So John would need some time to prepare the bid specs themselves. The publication is really just a notice, it's not the bid specs themselves. The publication says, we're soliciting bids, you can, you can request the bid specs from the engineering firm on this day. So it would also announce a date when they might be available. So that's kind of just gives you an idea of how that works. John would still need a few weeks to finalize everything for them to then be advertised, to have them ready for bidders to pick up. Based off of whether it's this existing meeting schedule or an additional meeting schedule, they would have to be advertised for, I believe, a minimum of, let's say, 2 weeks, but you want to increase that so you can get more bidders and better pricing. So ideally, you want to have this advertised for a month. So if, again, best case scenario, we authorize this tonight and it goes out in the paper next week, right? That's 1 month that you're talking about, so now you're taking it into mid-August. Then we've got our September meeting schedule, which is when you would likely award at the second meeting of September. That way, we can have a contractor have a pre-con meeting, they're gonna need to order supplies, mobilize, get it on their schedule. There may be periods of time where it's so cold that they can't work during the winter, and then there's work that would need to be done in the spring, and we're talking about, very limited in terms of construction window, say October, November, maybe December, let's throw out January, maybe throw out half of February, and then you've got March and April. So you're on a very tight timeline as is to get this done in the off-season, which is, what about a month or two ago we were talking about and how we got to this point. So that's, again, suggesting everything were to go as quickly as possible. So any delays to this would only risk our jeopardizing having this ready for the pool opening.
Okay, so,
May I just conclude my remarks? Because
oh, you
We'll
don't,
have something to say to the recommendations.
yeah,
well, I mean, I don't know that we have an end time tonight. It was just that I was speaking and you had, came in to ask a question. Because I had said, I think that perhaps we should put this off, come back for emergency meeting, and then you explored that, which I welcome. But I just wanted, I have one more
oh,
comment.
okay, I thought your remarks were
No.
done, okay.
I just have one more comment to make, which is, we can't, I think that allowing the process to dictate the outcome for a pool that's been with us since 1928, right, and the town's possessed it since 1967, I don't think that's a very wise move. I think that what you have to live with is the result. And if you talk to members, the first question you get about, well, why are we doing this to the pool walls? Okay, there might be a repair need, and, if we probably have to repair them again, just like we have in the last couple of years, and it might not be the most efficient thing. But the process and the needs of the process shouldn't outweigh the overall outcome and the lasting product that we're left with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And I do want to hear from everybody else. In terms of, I want to let the public know one thing. I will open and the opportunity for them to give input on this discussion, because I do value that discussion. I want to make sure we adhere to the timeline, but I also want to make sure we get resident input. Mr. Shoddy, so it sounds like the goal is to be able to award the contract second meeting in September. So and what is the notice we have to give for a special meeting?
48 hours sent to the newspapers.
Okay, so we can literally let it sit out there for a week and then call a special meeting just to address this, and are you good on your timeline? Okay, so let's think about that, but let's go through the discussion. In my mind, the goal here is we have general schematic for plans. It's not intended to be detailed, specifications. which certainly things like making sure that drainage is included, we can certainly provide that. And Mr. Rushke's pretty good on that stuff, so I don't doubt that he's already thinking about that. So, yeah, I'll open it up. Committeewoman Rowland, if you wanted to give your input at this time.
I just think that safety is foremost, and I think the difference between, you know, Colony and maybe a Noe Pond and other pools with the straight walls is that you can't see the bottom, and it is the murky water, and it's not the clear water, and that does pose a difference of a risk, because even my daughter is a lifeguard at Madison Pool, and there was an incident last week in a clear pool with a 10-year-old. So it's dangerous. And I just feel like this is a huge project financially and emotionally. And the reason that 98% of big projects fail is because they don't ask the people that are on the ground. So we've had some conversations, and I think I would love to have an emergency meeting to investigate other options, because I think when we first started talking about this, it was around, definitely the wall, you know, needs to be repaired. We need to figure that out. But then it was thinking longer term, like what do we want the swim lanes to look like? Because some other towns that come to our meets aren't thrilled or happy about not swimming in clear water, and it's different for them, and they feel it's a disadvantage, that kind of thing. So I thought when we were originally talking, it would kind of be a phased thing to get like the swim lanes and the dive tank to be kind of blocked off. That was going to be clear water, and then the rest of it to maintain the pond feel. But I'm not an engineer, but is there an opportunity to make that a sandy entrance, like extend the beach to have it a sandy entrance rather than a straight wall and the concrete wall sloping in? I think there's other opportunities that we should talk through with people that work there, that go there, and especially lifeguards who have experienced, different things at Colony Pool as a lifeguard. So I think happy to have an emergency meeting every week if we need one to meet the timeline, but I don't want to rush a project that I think there's other options to speak through. I feel like we had a quick conversation once to talk about the walls, and we said, okay, build a straight wall, but I'm not in a position to determine if that's the best answer.
And just to be technical, we wouldn't have an emergency meeting for this. We would have a special meeting.
Special meeting.
The emergency
Apologies.
is when there's a threat to health, safety, and welfare.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
First time ever using that term in my role. So that's just my input based on, having lifeguards in my family and risks to safety.
Thank you. Mr. McHugh, did you want to?
If I may, not to be too redundant here, I think a lot of points were taken on a lot around, but that consensus, in my view anyway, is that we're not ready to go forward, certainly with the specification writing. My big ask, however, and the reaffirmation of some of the other comments, is that we get as much member input as we can. I don't know that that's been, and this is my own ignorance, how much of that is really been discovered yet, as conversations, I'm sure, happen at Colony, as well as with the advisory committee. So if we could kind of hone in on, it's going to take time for the spec writing, it's going to take time for the advertising, it's going to take time for the project itself, and despite the most current weather, maybe it'll get cold this year. And so if the possibility is to kind of capture blocks of time, how much, if we can get additional input, how much time do we need for the advisory committee, Mr. Troy to be back involved, and then the members themselves, of course. And a good point from the safety is both sides. If it's straight and you jump in, that's easy, but it's also the sightline views of a unique spot, and certainly that is something to consider because of, and for lack of a better term, the feel that is there and the attractiveness to particularly young families. So if we can not necessarily delay, but at least allocate some time for each of these conversations, because what I'm hearing is that I want to ask more. So I don't think we're defined enough from the input from the membership primarily. So not to delay, but at least to put the brakes on, as Mark eloquently put it, to before we do the, but I had no problem with the allocation that we want to go forward
Absolutely.
and do this. I don't think that's really you know, a discussion that anybody would necessarily battle. Obviously, we definitely want to do it. And does that help our timeline when we can add these blocks? Or does that get in the way of our timeline if in fact we do not approve the allocation tonight, right? Or the approval tonight for what we can do in September? Is that going to impact the timeline if we don't do that, at least to have the ability and flexibility to do something early that we don't have to execute the actual project yet? Can
I
you
guess
comment?
the only other risk is if it is delayed and we aren't able to open the pool on Memorial Day weekend, because Fish and Game has been going through this right now. They have not been able to open for a broken pump, and it's chaos. And a lot of people are very upset. They're working with Minnesink. It's not good. So I'm thinking of that as a risk. If we start later, we have weather delay. Every single construction project, add a third in time and money. So that's another consideration to figure out when we pull the trigger on this. And if we decide, if we do wait another year and we suck it up and do the repairs for a year, but then be very ready to go on the day after Labor Day next year. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, knowing the budget pressures we're gonna have coming up, I don't wanna hold off on doing the colony pool. But I do wanna, you know, get, the colony member input, resident input. And I wanna make sure it's limited to things that are within the bid specs, because the bid specs are the wall, not necessarily the, you know, railroad ties, correct? Correct. Okay, so I wanna focus on the bid specs. I think we could do that in a week. I think we can get input in a week. I will tell you, you know, I know this is a very sensitive topic. I don't necessarily like change for the sake of change. I think we're all in agreement, and I want to make sure we mark these off. We're all in agreement. We like stairs. We're all in agreement. We want a vertical wall in the lap lanes. So, but what we do with the rest of it is a question. So, I contacted a number of the advisory committee members. We played phone tag, including with Committeeman Lois. And I went to the pool. I can't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday. My days are a blur. And I had hoped I would have stayed as long as I could have to talk to residents.
Well,
of course,
if it was nice, you went on Saturday. If it wasn't nice, you went on Sunday.
then it was Sunday because it started pouring the moment I got there. So, but fortunately, a lot of people were held captive up at the snack shack, so it was easier. The tried and true who were going to hang in there, and unfortunately kept getting bumped that half an hour every time the thunder rolled in. So, so I had an opportunity. I talked to lifeguards, I talked to our pool manager, and I talked to some of the members. And I was surprised because I walked in thinking, you know, my kids grew up there. We were there for years. We loved that wall. And I walked in thinking, well, why do we really need to change it? And then oddly enough, people reminded me of the safety issues of that sloped wall. So I knew about that, and it was why at first when the plans came through, and I asked about it and was told it was a safety issue, I thought, well, that makes sense to me. You know, the sloped walls, and this is feedback from residents, but also from me. The slope walls, anytime kids are crawling, walking, or doing anything on those slope walls, the lifeguards blow the whistle. So they shouldn't be doing that. And from, you know, a couple of people who are long-timers there, who also have a lot of pool experience elsewhere, managers and things like that. From their experience, the crawlers are better off on the vertical wall. They do hold on to the vertical wall. I do appreciate your perspective that parents can't see. You can see easier on the slope wall than you can when your kid's hidden behind a vertical wall. Seniors didn't like the sloped walls and didn't like the treads. They can't get in, they're not comfortable even on the treads. And, you know, after dealing with a knee injury and even, you know, as I improved, sloped walls are a frightening thing for me, so, even with treads. So, the stairs, you know, I appreciate that, and I think, the members will appreciate that. The notion about the curvature of the pool adds that whole quaint feeling. I think if we want the curvature and we want the vertical walls, we could redesign this. I mean, this pool's made with curved walls all the time, so I think we can keep that feature. I'm wondering if it makes sense to do the vertical walls in the deep end and then keep the slope walls, so you kind of get a mix of some of those features on the deep side that separate it for everybody, but then you still have the ability to hold on Somebody had said to me, who, you know, longtime lifeguarder, and they said, you can't hear the kids when they're on the wall and they slip down. You can hear them if they fall off of a vertical wall. So, you know, it was just different opinions. So the safety in that respect, I'm trying to remember what else came up. Yeah, I can't think. There was maybe one or two who liked things the way they were, and certainly I've gotten, you know, calls from a couple of people very passionate about keeping things the way they are. I would like the opportunity to get more resident input. So I would say if everybody's up for it, let's post the drawings again, and if we could post it with a message that it's conceptual, because that's what it is, and we're just trying to get input. But let me see. Next Tuesday, where are we? Next Tuesday, the 23rd.
Mayor,
Yes.
may I just make a few comments and address the issue of the resolution also?
Sure.
So, you know, Tiana and I, Township Attorney and I were just talking, and she said the same thing that I put in my email. I mean, the authorization can go ahead tonight. I mean, you know, the intent is never to go behind your backs and advertise anything that does not have a consensus. That would just eliminate the need for a special meeting to adopt the resolution. So, you know, I just want to offer that you keep that in mind. As for the, you know, the plans, you know, again, we don't want to put anything, Greg, none of the employees want to put anything public on the website that's going to spur a conversation that you guys haven't seen first. So that's why you're getting these plans before we've gone to the public and solicited their feedback. So I think it just needs to be clear that not anybody's trying to do anything that is not engaging the public, but you should have the ability to give us some direction and some initial thoughts on how you want us to proceed, so that way the public isn't hearing something for the first time that you have not also seen yet. So that's kind of that. There were discussions about, you know, safety and, you know, as you said, Mayor, there's a lot of different opinions on this. Who would you like for us to consult with on, you know, sort of this definitive of safety? What is better? The bowl, the wall, the, you know, the visibility, all these different things, because I think, you know, everybody's going to offer their opinions on what is safer and who do we want to rely on. I mean, at this point with these designs, you know, we're relying on engineers who design pools for a living, and they follow industry practices and best practices. So, you know, that's fine that, you know, we want to make sure that we're doing something safe, but I would ask, who should we consult with, or who would you prefer we consult with to get this sort of guidance on this is safe versus not safe, and what is safer, not safer. So I do think that that should be something that we try to get clarity on before we move ahead with any bid specs and advertise those. And then finally, I do just want to suggest that it's not only members, but it's also non-members, because the pool has lost members. And I think, you know, if we simply only cater to existing people, you lose the ability to attract other people to join. And, you know, I can give an example on that with the senior center and a community center that I worked on. You know, people don't like change, but there are other people that see change as progress. And, you know, as it was mentioned, the pool had rocks as walls, and then it went to that. Didn't have a frog. It didn't always have a frog. Didn't always have the things it had. So things develop, things progress, things grow, and I think that that's part of this iteration of Colony Pools. It's never always going, you know, it's not going to be this time capsule from the 1920s, because standards change, members change, preferences change, and that's also what we have to cater to. So, you know, I think if we're just going to solicit members' input, then we may be precluding other people, and that's where also sometimes you act as leaders to say, hey, yes, this is what existing members are, but this is going to help us grow the pool and move forward in a positive direction.
Okay, so in terms of safety, you know, we look to our engineer. Everybody else is speculating on safety, because we do know.
But what's not speculating on safety is that we know what's safe. We have a set of rules right now. The club has never lost anyone, you know, knock on wood. We've never lost anyone. That's amazing. And we know that the design that we have now can be safe. Anything else, while best intentions and expert advice given, will be a change. It can be managed, and I'm sure rules can evolve, And I'm certainly not against making changes at the pool, especially, I suggested the straight wall when this first came up in workshop, so in the lap lane area. So I definitely am not against change. I just think we know what is safe. Anything else is going to be where we need some real guidance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would disagree that it's safe because the lifeguards chase the kids off the walls all the time. So by de facto, it's not safe, otherwise the kids could be on the walls. So the problem is that nobody really knows how, well, our engineers tell us that they, based on their expertise, that the vertical walls are safer. I really think in many respects it's coming down to, I think there's a lot of people like the pool, they like the way, the setting, you know, we love it, it's very much a gem, and I think that in some respects is driving a lot of the opinion. But, you know, I still think we need to hear residents out. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to manage those two things, because I'm more than happy to listen to residents and get their input for a week. So you're saying we can move forward with a resolution, but then you need some guidance in terms of what the bid specs are gonna look like.
Correct, and, you know, we're still gonna need a consensus on that, but, you know, I don't see a reason we need to hold off on adopting the resolution. I'm certainly, none of us are gonna take this and, you know, sneak it behind your backs and advertise something. We know that there's no consensus on this. We're just offering that we don't need to delay that right now and, you know, worry then about timing, because also, as the township attorney noted, if, let's say, when we get to September and we receive bids, they're not good, we have to reject them. It's happened. We've had to reject bids multiple times for DPW roof, for other things. That just adds another delay. So we're here tonight, we have the resolution.
Yeah, I would offer that, I highly recommend that you adopt the resolution subject to us, you know, confirming the ultimate design before going and publishing. That should really be final before we publish, obviously, because then the clock really starts. But I don't want to see you waste any, lose any time. I'm concerned about how tight the timeline is, and I know that come spring, if we're not opening on time, it's going to be a big problem. And there are so many unknowns about receiving bids. You know, it could be that everyone doesn't submit a consent of surety, and then I have to reject everybody, or so, you know, those types of things can come up and can really delay us. So the quicker we move, the better. Being mindful of the design and the choices. I mean, I guess there's not unlimited choices here, so I think it's just gotta be a meeting of the minds of the committee as to what you wanna see based on input that you receive. And
How would we do such a meeting of the minds within OPMA without meeting?
so, I didn't understand. You wanna have a meeting to further discuss?
Because I was gonna ask the same question. So we can pass the resolution so that you have the authorization to go ahead with the bed specs. But the question is, how do we come up with a consensus when all five of us can't speak to each other? You know,
Yeah, that's another, yeah, I mean, if you wanna have a meeting to discuss that and we publish it, that's fine.
And then, if we're meeting, why not take the vote at that time? Because from a transparency point of view, I mean, that puts a definitive vote down as to what we're gonna do and gives direction. And without that, the residents, I mean, I know certainly as a resident, if I wasn't paying that close attention to all of this, I would be thinking, well, we've created the financing, and now we don't know exactly what the car is gonna be, but we're gonna sign the check and give it over to the dealership, and then we're gonna figure out which car it's gonna be afterwards. And that's kind of what it seems like.
I mean, well, that's
Yeah.
not what it is, because we do other things like that, but that's fine. I mean, we do that, police vehicles, a number of things. But, I mean, to the feedback point, let me go to that. What do you want exactly? Just this and present? I mean, we've got to ask a question. We've got to, do we propose 3 different concepts? One is as is, one is some straight with some curve, and then the other is all straight. I mean, what is it that we're seeking feedback? What kind of question are we trying to get answered from the public? Who's doing that? Is it just put this on the website and say, let us know what you think? You know, as we talk about this, I'm thinking, you know what, maybe we just push this off until next year. I mean, I don't know how we're gonna get around this with all these new delays and questions that have to be answered.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to throw in the towel just yet. So, but I would say, I think if everybody's comfortable with a special meeting, we hold a special meeting in a week. I'm fine with passing the resolution as long as it's understood that we're gonna, fine tune some of the details, and then, we all outreach to the community. We can't take it together, but we certainly could take field trips to the Colony Pool and talk to people, and encourage residents to reach out to us.
Are we able to have a meeting with an engineer so that we can have our questions answered? And it's an engineer that not only is a pool expert engineer, I understand that, but the dynamic here is you can't see through the water. So that's something that really needs to be included in the expertise of someone who builds pools. They have to really understand that it's not Madison Pool, New Providence Pool, it's Colony Pool. So that, if we could have a meeting where we could ask questions and just, whiteboard or something and say, okay, here's the, at this point, can we do sand? Can we do straight wall here and a sloped wall here? That, I think that would help us.
If that's a motion, I would second that motion.
Well, if we're
Yes.
setting a special meeting, there's no reason we can't ask John Rushke to be there to address the engineering aspects of this.
I think that would alleviate a lot of the questions and the possibilities, and I think after a little bit of time, we could probably all get there.
Well, we could certainly submit, we know that the clock is ticking. Tiana, you can write a resolution that says, subject to the approved specifications, right? And that's the reason for a meeting. Those specifications would be approved based upon our individual input that are their questions submitted. That's not a meeting. And then have John here for that final, this is what we've come to based upon each of our membership, the advisory committee's input. That way, things aren't held up. So I can see that being a process that gets us to what we want to do within a time frame that will work.
Okay, why don't we open, I said I would allow the residents or whoever's online, if they wanted to speak to, the same rules apply, so let's open up the hearing for residents to comment regarding what they've heard about the Colony Pool.
Asher, you were the first hand raised.
Hi, it's actually Asher's mother, Jessica Romeo on Pine Street. I just wanted to say that I really think taking a step back and really engaging the public is the only way to go here. You're proposing potentially drastic changes to our biggest community asset. And to do that without really getting input from people that go to that facility seems just irresponsible, or I don't know, it's not community friendly. I mean, the only way I see that actually happening is if you host sessions at the pool, a series of sessions where you have the plans, you have renderings, so people can see what this looks like, and you have someone who can answer questions. If you're just one-on-one soliciting feedback from cherry-picked people, it skews everything. This just feels like something that is so rushed that really impacts this community. Like I said, it's our biggest recreational asset we have. You're proposing huge changes. If you were to do what that drawing implies, it changes the entire atmosphere of the pool and why people go there. It just feels icky to me. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Just to be clear, the only cherry picking I did was everybody who was trapped up at the snack shack in the pouring rain. So I spoke to the lifeguards and I spoke to our pool manager. So just to be clear on that point. Anybody else?
Yes. Next up is Sarah Fechner.
Thank you.
Sarah?
I'm glad that you are considering.
Name and street.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sarah Fechner, 3 Rolling Hill Drive in Chatham, of course. I'm glad that you are slowing down and getting member input. And I propose, Mrs. Ewald, that maybe we'll consider when you went to have a rain date for that. Go back and talk to some more. when it's not raining if you have the time. But the people I spoke to were uniformly, and again, I cherry picked. I only found out about this yesterday. But the people I asked, and they happened to be all senior citizens, had no idea about this. They also said they liked the slope. And my husband pointed out, because he's getting over surgery, that for disabled people, they don't put in stairs, they have ramps. Maybe a thought is it possible to put a rail next to one of the treads? That's a possibility. But I happen to really like the wall. And there are lifeguards there to keep kids off the wall, and they're certainly more safe than dropping out of sight off of a straight line. I know of a story, and I can't use the person's name because I called them today and they weren't home. They're out of the country, actually. But there was a person who had to jump in to the deep end near the twin slides because there was a kid right up against the straight side who was drowning, was starting to drown. Did not drown, thank God. But this member was able to see the child because they were at a different angle than the lifeguards, and they jumped in and saved that child. The child could not be seen because there's sort of a blind spot, a triangular blind spot from a higher elevation when you have a straight wall. So do consider asking a lot of people, and do consider making sure that the engineer hasn't just done clear pools. And also, personally, I really like the aesthetic of the slope. And you do have a choice already of stairs or walking through the beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Next up is Erin Burgo.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Erin Burgo, Candace Lane. Mr. Shahadi, I want to reference something you said earlier tonight. You said many pools have straight walls. Well, Colony doesn't, and that's one of the many reasons I love it. It isn't like other pools. It's beautiful, it's unique, and we're so lucky to have it. And because of the bowl shape that Committeeman Lois described, I can see my kids all the time. I have joined other area pools, and I have attended maybe twice, and I continuously go back to Colony because I can see my kids all the time, and that is so valuable to me. The Colony Pool Club Advisory Committee met last night, and I can confirm that the concerns that have been raised tonight by Committeeman Lois, by Asha Robson, by Jessica Romeo, by Mrs. Fechner are shared amongst all members of our committee. They're also shared by members that I have spoken to at the pool. Colony Pool Club is unique. It's a naturally beautiful facility, and the changes being proposed are going to have dramatic impacts to the overall feel of the facility. I talked to a gentleman today that I met for the first time that just joined this year, a senior resident from Florham Park, and he told me how much he loved the pond-like feel of the pool, the trees, the shade. He had absolutely no idea that there were changes being proposed. So I really think it's important that we pump the brakes, as is being discussed tonight, and give people in the community and members of the pool and the lifeguards, et cetera, time to really weigh in on these changes that are going to that could potentially have a significant impact to the overall feel of the facility. So on behalf of the Colony Pool Club Advisory Committee, thank you. And please allow us to help in whichever way we can.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Yeah, Catherine, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Fowler from School Avenue, the same street as Colony is on. Appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts. I totally agree with the need to slow things down. This is, I would guess that most people have no idea that this conversation is even happening and will want to understand the details of what's being proposed and and look at it and share their stories. So I think I would recommend that you post opportunities for pool members and residents to participate in sessions at the pool. I agree with Jessica that having the plans available for people to review, ask questions, you know, and really try to understand what the proposal will encompass. One of the things that I heard was more cement around the pool, which I think is not a great idea. So I think those types of details, you know, I think everybody should understand them and think about, you know, how that will change and impact the environment. I'm also a member of the Board of Health, and I appreciated the question about safety and how are we going to, who are we going to turn to advise us on safety at the pool? You know, I think just because we've never had an issue doesn't mean we won't tomorrow. So we should always be thinking about that and always be prioritizing that as well as the environmental component of this community asset. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. To anybody else? Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to close the hearing. So I will, you know, I'm going to look to have a special session next Tuesday, but if that's not, it would be lovely to have all 5. And if we can get our professionals
We
to,
should probably make sure John's available before we
okay,
set that in stone.
okay. So if you could let me know so we could do that. But I do want to move forward either way with this. I don't know why we can't move forward with this resolution if it's contingent upon, because we know we want to, I guess I'm wondering if there's an objection to starting this process so that at least we can get bid specs, or just start the process knowing that the bid specs will be after our meeting.
If you adopt the resolution tonight, we still need the bid specs be completed before we can advertise anything.
Yeah.
So we got time.
I mean, we're not, it's, if we wind up in the situation where we have the stair, everything we agreed on, the stairs, the wall on the Lap Lane side, and potentially everything else is the same, then we're willing to move forward. It sounds like we're all in agreement that at a minimum, we're all comfortable with that, I think. The question is whether or not we switch from doing that to something different. So we could, no, I don't think anybody's objecting to moving forward. That's what I'm trying to get a sense of. Is anybody objecting to moving forward, or is it just that the details of what this is gonna look like we're objecting to?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what was said, that it was unanimous of the Colony Pool Advisory Committee. No one had a dissent from our previous advice. So I'm not sure if you're saying, if you're capturing that, you're saying that that is the design. I'm not sure. I'm a little lost in the design. But I can tell you, though, that, like, looking at this plan, even this concrete walkway that's 6 feet wide that goes all around the pool now, all around the new wall, I mean, looking at the topography on Spring Street, you've got at least a 2-foot drop. You'd need a retaining wall to build a retaining wall. You can't have the decking that's directly against the pool. Can't have more than, certainly not more than a sidewalk, and that would be maybe a 2% grade you're allowed, maybe. I mean, and so you couldn't possibly, that has to be dead flat. So now you're talking about building retaining walls. There's a lot to chew on here. I don't think a week is going to do it. And I don't think that gives the public enough time to digest this. I mean, I think a better question would be, like, how are we going to communicate this? Can this go out to the membership? Can a package be put together and you know, some type of the drawing, and then we blast it out to the membership?
Well, then you're talking about bumping everything for a year. So we gotta make that decision if we want to do that.
That's why I suggested, just from the feedback I'm hearing, it does sound like this is not going to happen in time. We're really risking it. We are, you know, we're really risking getting this ready, so it just seems like pushing it off till next year is the best route.
And so what does that mean for the wall? Because it just means that they've got to maintain, they're just got to
We're just going to have the same issues that we've had, but that's, again, a question for you guys, if that's fine. I mean, we've had these issues this year, last year. You know, I can't predict what's going to happen by next season between the winter and all this stuff. So, you know, delaying it potentially could result in a bigger issue come May.
Is there any, for lack of a better term, catastrophic failure potential that, never mind the crumbling and those kinds of things that are somewhat cosmetic or configuration. If in fact it is delayed for a year, do we have, maybe Mark, you can comment on this, any kind of catastrophic potential?
I mean, if they're, depending on the integrity of that wall, I can't, I mean, I don't want to speculate, but again, depending on the integrity of that wall, you could have major leaks in the pool. I mean, you could have serious issues there. Right now, we're just talking about large chunks of concrete, but it could, you know, penetrate the wall and cause major issues over the winter. We don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest issue would be ice, right, that gets into a crack.
Right.
So, you know, whatever care could be taken in the fall. But, you know, usually pools have catastrophic failures because they have pipes and returns and supplies, right? And we don't have any of that. So
Right.
the injectors are in the ground, in the sand, and the water all gets pushed out to the end of the pool. So there's no recirculation through the walls themselves. I don't want to speculate as to what else could happen. The pool's been there for a long time. The DPW's done a good job of doing repairs if we had to push it off. I'm not suggesting we should, and I do think that this, no matter what, needs to be presented in some way. I'm not against moving forward, but I don't think that, you know, rushing it forward is a good idea. You know, I think probably 2 weeks or so, well communicated, a week of comment, you know, you know, an honest attempt is what I would suggest at getting feedback.
Mayor, if I may, given the possibility that will be put off for a year, I suggest we don't adopt the resolution tonight, and we wait. And I don't know how you're going to proceed with whatever public hearings you're going to have, but I think we should wait to adopt the resolution. I don't want you to adopt that resolution and then for us to wait a year to actually go out to bid.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to wait the year, and to be honest, if we can't get the feedback in the week, we're not gonna get, that's gonna be the feedback. The people who are passionate about it, I'm gonna be at the pool this weekend, and I'll be just talking to lots of strangers at the pool, which I love. I love to meet residents and members of Colony Pool, so, you know, when I invite anybody else to do that as well. We could have the engineer at the meeting in the week to answer those questions, but, you know, in my experience, and the residents can be reaching out to us in the meantime also to give us, you know, their input. And I don't think if I really thought that, you know, this was a situation where we couldn't default to where we were, then, you know, I would say we need more time. Worst case scenario, we go back to what we were doing, so, and I'm perfectly fine with that. The reason I'm open to this is because, like I said, those slanted walls have always been a safety issue. One of the people I spoke to, again, long timer, was there as a kid, was a lifeguard, went through that whole thing. Remembered the days when they were allowed to be on the slanted walls, but everybody was getting injured.
Yeah.
So then they had to chase them off. So it's a known safety issue since forever. So that's why I've kind of opened my mind to, you know, maybe there's a better way. This might not be it, but there might be a better way. And I want to, you know, we're going to do this. We're going to do it once. We're not going to. There's no.
Right.
You know, this is a major undertaking. So I don't want to bump it. I want to take a chance that we can't open Colony Pool next year. I mean, that's a mistake, and that's on us. We should be able to get the feedback in the next week.
Is there an opportunity to have the meeting sometime next week, and are we able to adopt the resolution at that meeting? So, and is there also an opportunity maybe in this next meeting, kind of like the school district does with the calendar, because everybody has an opinion about what the calendar should be. So they send out 3 versions and everybody votes on it. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to come up with 3 versions, and then we share it with everyone, and then people can vote.
Which that'll take some time for John to come up with those drawings, so bear that
I
in
don't,
mind.
I don't even know if we have to do a drawing so much as even just say wall to the stairs with concrete.
People can't
Wall
visualize, yeah.
They can't?
No, they need.
I mean, is there a way to do it down and dirty, just to, I don't know.
Yeah.
If there's a way to do a quick down and dirty next week at the meeting, it doesn't have to be like beautiful and just have.
If that's a motion, I would
Yeah.
second it, and I also say that, you know, why wouldn't we leverage our email lists and send this out and do some sort of a poll? And whether it has to be just text-based, you know, writing, I mean, we could just simplify it down. Should we be spending $300,000 to, you know, to make straight walls at Colony Pool with staircases opposed to the sloped walls? I mean, you could create some very simple feedback.
Hybrid.
So that does raise another question I had, the cost. Is there any sense of whether or not one costs more than the other?
Not at this point.
Would we be able to go and bid both versions? Just tell them bid both versions and then decide? In case there's, you know, one turns out to be,
Yeah.
For all of them, and, you know,
oh, you need bid specs,
yeah,
okay.
we need bid specs for all of them, and that's why. Yeah, we need bid specs for all of them, and, you know, remember, you know, we had, John provide a proposal based on, you know, to do this engineering and prepare these, so the more we go through this, then, and have multiple designs, that's outside that scope, so I don't wanna speak for him, but I'm sure that's gonna change the cost and probably would come back to us with a different authorization for the engineering work.
Okay. Okay, so it seems like we're all on board, I'm fine if we move this resolution to the next meeting, we're all on board for a special meeting, and we're gonna aim for Tuesday if we could do that. And if
Yes,
we
we'll
want,
reach out to John to see if he's
I've
available.
texted him
If
already,
he did,
so
okay.
hopefully.
and he can zoom in. Yeah. I'll make sure to be at Colony Pool. Let me see. I can't go Saturday. I'll make sure I'm at Colony Pool. Oh, Colony, the fire department's at Colony on Sunday, so I'll be there Sunday. And if I can get a packet of the drawings, to have a couple packets of the drawings, that'd be great. Okey doke, so we have a plan, right? We're good?
So anything that you need me to act on as far as the drawings, the website, anything, where right now it's just a special meeting for next week?
Special meeting, if we could post, you know, what we have, with a general description. And I really want people to focus on what, you know, what's gonna be part of the bid specs. If we can figure out how to get people focused on that. So it's gonna be the wall, the stairs. I don't think we need to worry about anything outside of that.
So the asphalt and the concrete and all that, I mean, it's been raised, and that's why we, you know, to what level of detail are we getting into on this?
The asphalt, that's not being done, is that being done by our, or DPW, or is that part of the bid?
The concrete around, yeah.
Yeah, if it's part of the bid specs, leave it in there, of course. Okay.
Is it possible that we could add just simply an approximation, could be even wide, of the shallow end lane line? I believe that it goes, you'd have to read the topography here, and there's no demarcation as to how high the water goes up on the beach, but it would be helpful to people. They would understand where the shallow end begins, right, where the deep water starts.
You're just looking for notes on the.
Not a note, I mean, literally, yeah, I
A
would
little
just do
visual.
a drawing,
Yeah.
and just a, you know, approximation.
Yeah, it's, so I don't know where the old wall is on or the existing wall is on here, but I was amazed at how far back from the current wall that lane line is set up. You know, that safety line where the kids can't pass? It's nowhere near that wall, the
It's
existing
between
wall.
316 and 314 would be my guess, the topography markings, but but the, you know, the average person, it would be very helpful to them.
Okay. Okay, are we set? We can move forward?
I'll have to speak with you afterwards.
That's fine.
I really don't have a clear direction
Yeah.
on what to do.
That's fine. Thank you. Okay, are we moving to our regular meeting session over there? Was there anything else? Sorry?
That's it for workshop.
Okay, I guess the only question I have remaining on workshop, did anybody have any questions from all the reports that we received? Okay. Great, then we are moving into our regular meeting, and we'll start with Township Committee reports. Committeeman Lois, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll start with Colony Pool. So we have, not to belabor any of the other points, but just, there was another piece of advice from the Colony Pool Committee, which was just that we note that the log roll is gone. It's not there right now, and we are asking, the committee is asking if we would, that we would be, if we should be tasked to gather input, to do research, to make recommendations, or to support the search for some sort of replacement for that amenity. That amenity is important to the pool because it helps to engage older children, and our biggest struggle is to engage children once they hit the tween teen years and keep them engaged and interested in the pool before they're kind of off and working and doing summer camps and things like that. So that log roll was helpful, especially for that age group, that 11, 12, 13, 14 group in there. So the attractiveness of it isn't lost, that it's used in all the promotion of the pool. So obviously it's an attractive element. So if we could do perhaps another log roll, lily pads, whatever, we would certainly be willing to brainstorm some ideas if that's needed. But we just note that it's not there and would really looking to have it replaced in just whatever way we could be helpful. We would love to be tasked.
Yeah, so I am going to interrupt you there. So I would say, yes, could you ask the committee to look into options and to make some suggestions? That was the other piece of feedback that I did receive this weekend was we want to replace the log roll, and I agree.
See, you were at Colony.
That
That's
was
dead
definitely-
proof. All right. And then, as I mentioned, Mr. Choi and I had conferenced about the pool, the field rules, and then also some other miscellaneous recreation improvements, and I'm looking forward to meeting with him for recreation. In terms of, that's it for my reports.
Thank you. Mr. McHugh?
Thank you, Mayor. Not a lot on reports this particular meeting for Environmental Commission and Open Space. That is beyond the other things of everybody join in. I think we'll push that harder in the fall. But I did want to bring up something about the library, and that is as much awareness as anything. As we're all well aware, there is a very significant weather pattern that is both hot and humid. And it's been an extraordinarily difficult time for the staff at the library to keep up. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that we have to be aware that humidity certainly affects books, but it absolutely impacts the library staff and what they're doing. They're a very highly trained and capable staff that's emptying buckets, essentially. And so this is something we don't want to lose sight of. I know there's all kinds of things we're talking about, but I do want to emphasize that this is something that we should not ignore. And so I want to just resurface it for everybody's back of mind and front of mind for 30 seconds anyway here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McHugh, I have a question about that. Are you talking about capital improvements? Are you talking about a plan, execution? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, thank you. There's a number of, over the course of years, as you're well aware, the capital plan for improvements on the library. All of these little parts and pieces are in fact impacted by that mechanical system. Or I misspeak, it's mechanical systems in plural. And that is something we really need to not forget about, because this will be ongoing. It will be quite a burden and an albatross really around the staff for a long time. So I just wanted to bring it up so that we do not lose sight that this is something that is very serious in its impacts on not just the library, not just the assets of the library physically, but also the assets of staff. And so I think that's a very important thing that we do not forget about as we consider and support the library along with the borough toward a capital plan that actually gets done sometimes, within our lifetime, so to speak. So that's really what I wanted to bring in. It's really an awareness question more than a report question. I think we can't forget about this because they're living through it right now, and it's very, very cumbersome on the library.
Mr. Stotty, last we left off, I thought we were waiting for them to give a phased plan. Where was that?
That is my recollection as well. I actually met with the library director today, coincidentally, and the new assistant director, and kind of raised that same point because I hadn't heard anything. And she had said something that their architect had emailed all of you something, which kind of surprised me. And I was like, I don't think so, because she insisted that their architect emailed something about the phased-in approach, and I told her not to my knowledge. So she did have a memo from the architect. My understanding was that the architect gave him, don't quote me on the number, but I want to say something as shocking as $300,000 to $400,000 to just develop a phased-in approach. which was brought before the Board of Trustees, and I believe the Board of Trustees voted that down. She was asking for mine and Mr. Williams, my colleague over, counterpart over at the borough, for our assistance in meeting with the architect, or talking to the architect to see how we can get that cost down, if at all possible, so they can develop the phased-in approach. So no, that has not been developed yet, and it seems like there's going to be a significant financial outlay in order to get that going. I did reach out to Mr. Williams today, and we're going to try to coordinate between us so that way we could help them out on that.
Couldn't we just engage our township engineers to take a look at that problem? I don't know why it costs $300,000 to $400,000 to come up with a phased plan. That's insane.
Because there's a lot of interplay between all the different components that go into this, and so, because it's not just the mechanical, but, you know, a lot of structural and space issues, engineering issues. So while the engineer could kind of look at it, it definitely does come from an architect. My understanding is, I believe the mayor of the borough has a contact who is also an architect, and reviewed that proposal and did say it is within the range of what it would cost to do a phased-in approach anyways. So it is a significant amount of legwork to come up with that.
Okay, so I guess we're back to square one. And hoping for some of the federal funding, the grant. Well, actually,
That would
it
be
was the
ideal.
state money. Did they hear back on that state money?
I'm not aware of that, Mayor.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr. McHugh? I mean, that's it.
Okay. Committeewoman Rowland.
Library and like unload buckets. I probably will. While you're at Colony, I might be at the library. But I just want to remind people that National Night Out this year is Tuesday, August 6th, and we will be having an event at Colony Pool. And last year was great. It was huge turnout, so I'm sure it'll be the same this year. So keep that on your calendars. And then just a reminder that if you haven't got your dog license or your cat license, you can do that.
Thank you. When you said National Night Out, you did remind me of one thing. At the next meeting, I'm looking forward to having a resolution officially setting up an community events committee. Sorry, I had to think of the name of the committee. I've got 6 people who are interested in participating, which I'm very excited about. And they're already thinking about ideas. So I'll be meeting with them Thursday to kind of talk about that structure and how we can, plan ahead for, taking it slow this year and then coming up with a plan for next year. So I'm excited about that. Okay. So we're going to move on to our public hearing and final adoption of ordinance 2024-16, which is authorizing deed of historic preservation easement. So I will open the hearing for that ordinance. Open the public hearing.
No one
online?
No hands raised.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I will close the public hearing. And then, just so everybody's aware, this is tied to the funding for the restoration of the Red Brick Schoolhouse. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 2024-16?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. Can we get a vote, please?
Mr. Lois?
Yes.
Mr. McHugh?
Yes.
Mrs. Rowland?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Did we have, Colony is in there, so we're removing which one is it?
171.
Oh, yeah. 2024-171. Anything else anybody wants to remove for discussion? That's removed from this evening's consent agenda, but anything anybody wants to remove for discussion?
I don't need to remove it, but I would just, yeah, I'll remove 173. That's fine. That's fine.
173?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda with 171 removed and 173 to be discussed later?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing number 8, the 171, and for discussion, the Nashfield lighting, number 10.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No, there would not be any discussion, sorry. Can we get the vote, please?
Mr. Lois,
Yes.
Mr. McHugh,
Yes.
Mrs. Rowland,
Yes.
and Mayor Ewald.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so now we'll address 2024-173, change order for Nashfield lighting visors. Let's start with a motion to approve that resolution.
I'm so moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, open for discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about this, so this is putting some visors on Nashfield, and this was basically, to my understanding, not kind of doing enough due diligence on this project, not kind of checking every box and taking it to all the committees and places where it should have been taken to. And I just think that whether you look at this, or you're looking at the Runnymede Fairmont intersection or Green Village Connector, when we're looking at these infrastructure projects and things that are just kind of like the nuts and bolts of township business, where we're filling potholes and making repairs and doing curbs, like, it can't hurt to talk it out. It can't hurt to, if it takes a month delay, if it takes a little bit of delay, it's worth it, because it ends up coming back to us. And this is an example of something like we're putting in a fix here, and it's great that we were able to come to it, but it was a lot of time and attention that go into these fixes, and that we have a saying in the business I used to be in, it's like, there's never enough time to do it, there's always enough time to do it again. And if we could if we can learn a lesson from this for Colony Pool, and for future projects, I think it would be helpful. So thank you for indulging me.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
If I may just clarify, that's not what happened with this one. This was because the prior administrator did not take us to the planning board for master plan review, capital review, it should have been bypassed the permitting process as well.
Yeah, I don't see how that deviates from my comments.
I think that's what he was getting at. But yeah, just if you want to clarify that, just so residents
Sure,
understand.
the difference is that this did not follow the process. It's not that it didn't get input, it didn't follow the process that it should have been, which was when making certain improvements, it's got to go to a planning board, if you're making capital improvements like this, to make sure that we're following our ordinances, and my predecessor did not do what was supposed to be done with this.
Thank you. Okay, so can I get a vote, please?
Mr. Lois,
Yes.
Mr. McHugh,
Yes.
Mrs. Rowland,
Yes.
and Mayor Ewald.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And we will open the second hearing of citizens.
We don't have any hands raised.
Okay, then I will close the second hearing of citizens. We are going to move into executive session. Normally, we have these at the beginning of the meeting. We're going to have this at this point. We don't anticipate taking any action upon return. So residents are welcome to hang out till the end, but you don't need to, because these are minor items, which is why we put it at the end of the meeting instead of the beginning. So I'm looking for a motion.
Before we do the motion, as far as I know, Mr. Shadi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we expect to take any action after the executive session.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what I said.
Okay.
Thank you. I know I'm getting old. I just turned another year today.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say that.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, we're hitting a big milestone next year, so I'm very sensitive too. Okay, so do I have a motion to go into executive session for Resolution 2024-P11?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Mr. Lois,
Yes.
Mr. McHugh,
Yes.
Mrs. Rowland,
Yes.
Mayor Ewald.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we are moving into executive session. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your feedback. And I look forward to seeing you at Colony.
Recording stopped.